There was a senator who hated communist China and supported the Republic of China so much that he was known as the Senator from Formosa. William Fife Knowland was born in Alameda, California on June 26, 1908. His mother, Eleanor Knowland, died a month after he was born. His father, Joseph Knowland, was a Republican congressman and owner of the Oakland Tribune. Unsurprisingly, William Knowland was involved in Republican politics from a young age. He was elected to the California state legislature at the age of 24. He left office and fought in World War II. In 1945, Senator Hiram Johnson died, and California's Republican Governor Earl Warren appointed William Knowland to take his Senate seat upon the recommendation of William's father. William Knowland would return the favor by supporting Warren's failed presidential campaign in the 1948 Republican primaries. Republicans returned to the White House after a 20-year absence when Dwight Eisenhower became president and Richard Nixon became vice president in 1953. Despite both being California Republicans, Knowland and Nixon hated each other. Knowland became Senate Majority Leader and generally supported Eisenhower. Eisenhower called him impeccably honest, courageous, studious, and serious, and praised him for getting the 1957 Civil Rights Act passed. That said, Knowland supported Joseph McCarthy and sometimes disagreed with Eisenhower, seeing him as too liberal. But William Knowland wasn't called the Senator from Formosa for his views on domestic policy. He was a firm anti-communist who believed in the domino theory that one country falling to communism would cause other countries to fall to communism. When Harry Truman was president, he sent George Marshall to try to get the communists and nationalists to stop fighting each other. Marshall said that supporting the nationalists was futile and that they had no hope of winning. Knowland did not trust George Marshall or the U.S. State Department and called for more aid to Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists. In April 1949, as the Chinese capital of Nanjing was about to fall, Knowland tried to get Congress to approve $125 million for the nationalist regime. Knowland believed that Chiang Kai-shek was the only thing preventing Asia from falling to communism. And if Asia fell to communism, ultimately so would Europe. He gave hundreds of speeches on the Senate floor in support of the nationalists. He said, "You can't close the door to communism in Europe and leave it open in Asia. There have been a number of those in the administration who failed clearly to understand that communism is a global menace." What the men in the Kremlin understood 2 decades ago when Lenin pointed out that the road to Paris is through Beiping. In August 1949, he helped the Democrat-controlled Senate approve $75 million for the general area of China, which in practice just meant Taiwan, for his continued support of the nationalists, even as their cause looked more and more hopeless. He became known as the Senator from Formosa. Knowland's interest in Asia stemmed at least in part from being born on the West Coast and was closer to Asia. A lot more Americans, especially back then, lived in the eastern part of the country. America's leaders, and their British counterparts too, for that matter, were hawkish when it came to communism in Europe, but not when it came to Asia. This was true from the end of World War II to the outbreak of the Korean War. In late 1949, William and his wife Helen visited Taiwan. He cabled President Truman and asked him to set up an air and sea blockade of mainland China in response to the communists' arrest of American diplomats. And then he flew to Chongqing. Yes, he flew to Chongqing in late 1949. Chongqing was the last major city outside of Taiwan still held by the nationalists, and the communists were closing in. Chiang Kai-shek's wife, Sung Mei-ling, gave Helen Knowland a ring as a gift, which was stolen by a burglar. Side note, the burglar probably had no idea what the significance of the ring was, and whoever is in possession of it now almost certainly does not know who it used to belong to. William and Helen Knowland, along with Claire Chennault, the legendary leader of the Flying Tigers, escaped from Chongqing on December 7th. They could hear gunfire as they flew out of the city. Knowland continued to call for a blockade of mainland China. He reminded Americans that the nationalists had been faithful allies against Japan in World War II. His detractors said he was part of the China lobby and that KMT elites were using him and other politicians to influence American policy. Knowland denied that he was ever part of the China lobby or that he even knew of any such group existing. The U.S. government, and especially the State Department, was clueless. They spent 1949 calling for Chiang Kai-shek to make a coalition government with the communists. On December 23, 1949, the State Department sent out a telegram to all Far Eastern posts saying that Taiwan would soon fall to the communists, and America was going to do nothing to prevent it. In January 1950, Secretary of State Dean Acheson told the Senate that America would not defend Taiwan. Earlier that month, Britain and several other Western countries had decided to recognize the People's Republic of China, and it looked like America might do the same. But everything changed when Communist China intervened in the Korean War. America became much more supportive of the Republic of China. Knowland would continue to support the Republic of China, and in the 1950s called for Eisenhower to protect Kinmen and Matsu, islands near mainland China that were still held by the nationalists. When having dinner with Chinese guests, he would often toast, "Back to the mainland." William Knowland could have become president had things gone a little bit differently, and I want to explore that alternate history possibility in a future video. But in real life, Knowland decided in 1958 to destroy his political career. He decided not to run for re-election to the Senate, and instead, he ran for governor. He was anti-union, which was very unpopular, and California Republicans lost both the Senate and governor elections in 1958. Winning only 40% in California as a Republican was really bad back then. In 1961, William Knowland became the owner of the Oakland Tribune, a position he would hold until his death. He helped Ronald Reagan get elected governor of California in 1966. In the 1970s, he began to change his views and became more moderate. He even supported Nixon's trip to China in 1972. After leaving the Senate, William Knowland lost a lot of money gambling and owed a lot in debt to the Las Vegas mob. He became worried that someone would try to kidnap him or one of his family members. He told his by this point ex-wife Helen that he would probably never make it out of debt while he was still alive. On February 23, 1974, William Knowland unalived himself at the age of 65. Decades after his death, the LA Times called Knowland a stubborn, self-destructive, courageous, and honorable Californian.